Well, we almost made the whole countdown timer today. Good morning, folks. It is Monday, December 23rd. We got a couple of days till Christmas. I keep forgetting that Christmas is kind of celebrated worldwide. When we have Thanksgiving, I know that, Thanksgiving is kind of a United States thing, that there's a lot of countries that don't really celebrate Thanksgiving. But I think when it comes to Christmas, Christmas is kind of one of those holidays that gets celebrated all the way around the world. So, Merry Christmas to all of you. We're going to actually not probably do a Wednesday live stream for Christmas morning because I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to be hanging out with family. It would be awfully hard to do. And when I really think about it, 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, you guys are going to be with your families and hopefully enjoying, some special time celebrating Jesus's birthday and, opening some presents, having some good food. So we're going to do the live stream today. We're going to do the Trader Tuesday tomorrow. I'm excited about that. One of our members shared an incredible story with me about some of the trading that we've been doing. I've got a couple of new trades open, so tomorrow's Trader Tuesday live stream should be fantastic. And, today should be a pretty cool live stream too. Let's start off here in the chat. We got Dave P. Good morning, Dave. I swear, you guys, I love you. All 5 of you that are right here. We got Dave P., Eric, Deadwood, Pablo, Daniel. All of you are here every single day. Like I can count on it like clockwork. It amazes me sometimes how consistent you guys are. Like you guys are as consistent, if not more consistent than me. I've probably missed more days in the last year than you have. Blockchain billionaires, good morning. So anyways, I hope you are all doing fantastic. Deadwood, Merry Christmas, my friend. Hope you are doing great. I don't know if I'll see you on the Trader Tuesday live stream tomorrow or not, but if not, man, have a fantastic Christmas. Mr. Eric Bernstein, good morning, my friend. Christmas has to be extra fun for you with the little ones. Your kids are such a wonderful age to experience Christmas and stuff with. So God bless you, my friend. I hope that you and your wife and the kids and, your family have a fantastic day tomorrow. Mr. Pablo Noodles, thank you for being here, man. Merry Christmas, my friend. You will have celebrated Christmas about 8 hours ahead of me. So on Christmas Day, right about the time I'm getting ready to celebrate Christmas, you probably be wrapping it up and starting to unwind and get ready to call it a day. But I hope you have a fantastic December 25th. Same thing here with Daniel. Daniel, I love you, brother. I'm so glad that our paths crossed. And excited for what 2025 is going to bring. I'm excited for 2025 for all of us, folks. I think that, 22, 23, even, 24 has had its ups and downs for sure. But I would say there's probably a lot of people watching this channel today that are maybe, hoping that 2025 is even a lot better than 2024. So, and I believe that it will be. So I am excited about that. We got Buy the Goon Dip. Hey, good morning, Goon family. The Goon is a meme coin that we talked about a month and a half, 2 months ago on the channel. Sounds like it's maybe in a good buy zone. We'll have to potentially take a look at that in the not too distant future. So what do we got? It is great. The Christmas magic is in full swing at their age. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Merry Christmas to everyone here. Yeah, absolutely, folks. And what do we got going on here? Deadwood says, yeah, sadly for me, it looks like I'll have to find a new job. Boss man just isn't getting enough work to live on. Man, I'm sorry to hear that, Deadwood. But I know that, there's a plan for you. I know that something's going to come down. Normally when one door closes, the next door that opens is even better. So maybe you're going from good to great, or you're going from okay to good, or whatever it's going to be. Also, Deadwood, I have to assume that your crypto portfolio is starting to look relatively good. If you can just hold on for, a couple, 2 or 3 or 4 more months, you potentially, hopefully will have enough money laying around in your crypto portfolios to not care too much about the about the job in a sense. It is important to have some income. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Man, I swear, guys, I apologize. I'm a little sniffly again today. I swear it's I use a CPAP machine, and for whatever reason, it seems like the first hour or two of the day for me, I'm always just a little bit sniffly. I'm not sick. And it seems like it always is worse, like right in the beginning of the live stream than it is during, some of the rest of the time. So trying to avoid sniffling on you too much. I know that gets old. And but let's get into the content here. Let me see if I can get over to the screen that I want to share. Actually, I think I'll bring that up a little bit later. So one of the things that I'm trying to do, folks, is I want to try to create more powerful content in a little bit shorter amount of time, if possible. Not that I don't enjoy going for an hour or hour and 15 minutes or even 2 hours. I just want to be respectful of your guys' times. I think looking back, there's, hour-long live streams where I probably could have put everything that I really needed to say into 30 minutes or so. I will probably continue to run long, but it's on my mind to try to condense a little bit of this content so that you guys get the main key points, and then you have the ability to go out and implement and, kind of make it a part of your life. And so let's get into it. So many YouTubers out there, they make these titles that are, for lack of a better word, they're clickbait. They want to get clicks, and don't get me wrong, I want to get clicks, I want to get views. But when I say, the title of this video, if I remember correctly, it's funny. I got to get it all put in and ready to go, set up for the stream. And then when the stream goes, I can never remember the exact title. But if I remember correctly, it's, something along the lines of, why it feels so hard to get rich when it's never been easier. And depending on what spectrum of the scale you fall on, you might have read that thumbnail and thought, man, yeah, it is. It definitely feels incredibly hard to get rich right now. Or there's some of you that might have read that thumbnail that were on the other end of it. They're like, yeah, it is easier to get rich than ever. But I think for most people, the first half of that thumbnail is probably resonates as being fairly true. And part of the reason for that is we've all been lied to, our whole lives. And so one of the challenges of this Monday live stream is when it really comes down to it, folks, there's really a small handful of things that you need to do to create financial success in your life. And so I kind of noticed over the last month, we've been going strong now for probably about 9 months, I believe, that we've been doing these live streams every Monday. And man, it's not that I'm running out of things to talk about, but it's that I'm kind of having to rinse and repeat and kind of say the same thing over and over and over. And folks, that's partially because the truth is normally a smaller set of facts than all of the lies in the world. So there is definitely some overlap. A lot of the things that I'm going to say today, you may have heard over the last year, but I'm going to hope and try to say them slightly differently and put them into a context that maybe will, maybe some of you will have an aha moment. And I think that most of you that are watching today are probably doing very well in life, much better than the average person. And so I know that this video, as powerful as I hope it's going to be, and that I think you guys are going to enjoy it and get some good out of it, probably the guy that finds the YouTube channel for the first time next week, or even next month or next year, is going to get more out of this video than you guys that have been here every single Monday for the last 9 months, because you obviously have a lot of these habits and traits and things in place. And so it's not necessarily going to be as impactful to you guys as it is to somebody that is kind of coming into the channel and kind of learning a little bit more. And so I want to get into it. I also want to not really apologize, but I got a brand new camera. Beautiful, beautiful camera. It's sitting right behind my laptop here. And for the life of me, I could not get it to work, man. I have my filmographer out here. We got it all set up about 3 or 4 days ago. Got the cord from my computer plugged into the camera, had everything working, but for the life of me, I could not get it to actually translate to where that camera was showing up here. And so I'm on the stupid computer webcam camera, and I know it's not as high a quality. I'm trying to work on that. I want to give you guys the best quality moving forward into the new year. So the reason that this video topic kind of came up was I watched a couple of different videos over the last week that were kind of focused about money. And one of them really went into why it's easier than ever to get rich. And I really liked the videos by a gentleman named Myron Golden. And so he gets a lot of credit for what I'm going to be talking about today. But there's another gentleman named Ed Milet, who is also, you know, one of my favoriteest people on this planet, that really talked about wealth, not only creating it, you know, but keeping it. And he went into a lot of statistics that were pretty amazing to me. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but he talked about, you know, how many millionaires there are and how many people make, you know, I think it's $250,000 to $290,000 a year puts you in the top 1% of earners. If you're making $1 million a year, you're like in the top 0.1% of earners. Well, one of the statistics that he went into was something along the lines of, obviously very, very few people are ever going to make $1 million in a year. But the number of people that make $1 million in 1 year compared to how many people make $1 million a year for 5 years or more consecutively shrinks up another, you know, about 90%. And so, you know, that doesn't really go into why it's easier to become wealthier than ever right now. But I thought it was kind of interesting. And his point was that a lot of people will go out and they'll do something that works for a short period of time and they'll create more money than they're used to, but that most people end up coming back and shrinking back to what they were comfortable with and where they used to be. And so I think that's an important awareness, folks. You have to expand your comfort zone, and you have to have this identity that you are a rich person, that you are a wealthy person. If you're a poor person or a middle-class person that just comes into some money that gets, you know, I wouldn't even use the word lucky necessarily. Like, I don't think any of you that are going to get, you know, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in your crypto portfolios, lucky is the last word for it. But I want to warn you ahead of time as we go into this topic that making the money a lot of times is a lot easier than actually holding on to it. And I think that you've all heard hundreds and hundreds of stories of people that have made a lot of money in crypto that never really held on to it and turned it into lasting change and really, you know, created financial freedom in their life to where they could do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. Most people that have made a lot of money in crypto have lost it. You know, they rode it all the way up. They've rode it all the way down. You know, they've also, a lot of people have made a lot of money in crypto and then they squandered it buying stuff. And anyways, I don't want to get into all of that. That's not really the topic of today. And that's one of the reasons I have trouble staying in under an hour. But so once again, why does it feel like it's harder to get wealthy, rich right now? And yet it's never been easier. And so let me kind of just dive into that a little bit. So Myron Golden's contention, and I agree with him a lot, is that I think a lot of the average population really believes that right now it's a miserable time to, you know, financially in this world. And part of the reason for that is when you go to the grocery store and you go to buy whatever, you know, a gallon of milk or a carton of eggs, you know, a pound of hamburger, you know, we feel the pinch. Like, it's amazing some of the examples that I've seen where people have shown a shopping list from like back in 2018 or 2019 or 2020. And, you know, they show a shopping list and they show at the total of it, they show the receipt, and it adds up to say like, you know, $37.42 for whatever, you know, 6, 7, 8 items that they got. And now they show a receipt right next to it for the same amount of stuff, and it's like $150. And so, you know, the government is crazy when they try to say that inflation is only 8 or 9 or 10%. I mean, most things in the world have gone up exponentially from that. I'm paying way more than 8 or 9% more for my groceries, for my gas, and that type of thing. You know, the other thing that is going on is real estate is not becoming more affordable. So as we have, you know, gone through the last 4 or 5 years, you know, with the flu and everything else that's happened, even though people's purchasing power has gone down and the amount of the ability that they have to keep up with inflation has eroded their financial sources a ton, real estate hasn't really had that dip. And I know from, you know, personal example, I moved out of a 3-bedroom apartment back in 2000. Man, I guess it was only, you know, it wasn't that long ago, folks. Like back in, I think it was about 2020. I was still living in a 3-bedroom apartment. 2021 came along, and when the bull market hit, you know, I moved into a, you know, a bigger, like a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. But long story short, that 3-bedroom apartment was like $1,200 a month. It was very inexpensive, you know, back in 2020. And even in Vegas terms, there was a lot of places that were more expensive, but I was trying to keep my expenses down and be able to build up a crypto bankroll, build up a, you know, create a life for myself. But long story short, I don't know what that place costs now, but just for the fun of it, I called them, probably it's been a year to 2 years ago. And that same apartment that was $1,200 back in 2020, by 2022, 2023 was $1,800 plus. So it had gone up 50%. So I don't know about you, but if I had been living there and all of a sudden they sent me a notice and told me, hey, we got bad news for you. The rent in your apartment's going to go from $1,200 to $1,800, you know, that would have hurt. And I think for most people, that would probably cause a lot of people to just move out. Or if they didn't move out, it would be, you know, an extreme struggle. Just think about where you're sitting at in life and imagine your mortgage payment or your rent or whatever you're spending to live where you live. And all of a sudden it just goes up by 50% in a pretty rapid period of time. And in some cases, if you're renting, like it was literally overnight, you know, landlords were sending out notices to their renters like, hey, your lease is up in 3 months. When your lease runs out, your new rent, if you want to stay here, is going to be, you know, 50% higher than it was right now. I had some, you know, friends from the church that their rent went up double. Like it's literally going to cost them 100% more to stay living where they were. So when people think that it's tougher than ever to get rich in their mind, they're not wrong. In a sense, like I can understand why a lot of people are hurting. Therefore, they believe in their mind that it's harder than ever to get rich. So I just want to, you know, talk about it. The other thing is, you know, if you look at the cost of, like, if you look at your pay and you look at, you know, your raises over the last handful of years, if you work for a company and you get a raise once a year or twice a year, whatever it is, in most cases, that raise is like 3% a year. Yet, once again, we talked about how inflation is 8, 9, 10, 11% at the best. And it's probably worse than that. But if you're earning 3% more a year than you used to, but it costs 11% more a year to live, obviously it doesn't take very many years of that to feel, you know, a huge squish. And so that's the problem. The problem is the government is printing money. Inflation is out of control. You know, in my opinion, the elite especially the old elite, they wanted us to be broke. They want us to be broke. They want us to be out of shape. They want us to be overweight. They want us to be lazy. They want us controllable. And so one of the biggest problems that's gone on and why most people believe that it's harder than ever to get rich is because they're playing in a game where the rules are rigged against them. And so one of the most important things that I can open your mind to, if it's not already open to it, if this is the first time you're hearing some of this, is you've been lied to. I've been lied to our whole life. From the time we were old enough to, start going to kindergarten, most people have been taught to go to school and get a good education, go to college, learn a skill, and then go get a job. And folks, I'm here to tell you that there's nothing wrong with a job, but it's an okay place to start, but it's a terrible, terrible place to finish. Jobs are so finite. You can only work so many hours in a day. I don't care who you are. You got to sleep for 4 or 5 or 6, even if you're somewhat superhuman and you can live off of less than 8, you still got to sleep for 4 or 5 or 6. So even if you could live off of 4 hours of sleep, that still only gives you 20 hours a day. And then you got to have a little bit of time off. Most of us, you have dreams of having a wife or a husband, some children. I mean, so you can't just work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. You got to be able to spend enough time with your wife and your kids and, have a time for your spiritual walk, your spiritual journey. You got to have time for your health. So, I mean, even if you could work 20 hours a day, that's still not going to create enough money if the only finances that you have coming in are based on the hours that you're putting in. So that's the first thing that you really have to be aware of and that you want to start working on moving away from. So right now, if all of your income is derived from the hours that you put into your job, you want to figure out a way to slowly move away from that. So Deadwood, I'm not going to pick on you, but here Deadwood is. This is a gentleman that is a master of his trade, has incredible skill in the construction industry, and through no fault of his own, he's not employed right now. And that is part of the problem with trading time for money. A lot of people think that owning their own business or investing in cryptocurrency or you name it, learning how to trade options in the stock market, they think all of that stuff is risky. But I'm here to open your eyes to the fact that working for a company is incredibly risky too. Most of us probably understand that 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, there was a lot of people that would work for a company for 30 or 40 years. They would build up a pension. They would be able to retire, and they had Social Security. They had a pension, and they were actually able to, live a comfortable life. I've got some friends of the family. I grew up right across the street from them. Fran and Beth were their names, and Fran worked for the railroads. I think he was born in around 1920. He literally, grew up, went through the Depression, and then he worked for the railroad. And he worked for the railroad until he was probably around 60 years old. And he was able to retire. I remember being a little kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, and he was retired. Now, he was lucky. He was one of the lucky ones. So the pension from the railroad and his Social Security, and Beth, his wife, I don't know if she had anything coming or not. I know that, they had 2 children. They had 2 daughters that they raised, and they ended up with some grandchildren. And I don't know if Beth had money coming in or not. But what I do know was they lived to very, very close to 100 years old. They just passed away in the last handful of years. So I was born, in 73. And I don't know exactly when they retired, but I know that for basically the last 40 years of my life, from the time I was 12, they were already retired. And they passed away when I was probably, say, 46, 47, 48. So he had the ability to retire and live a life for 30, 40 years because of that work that he had done for the railroad for all of those years. But even then, folks, they didn't have a lavish lifestyle. They lived in the same house for all of those years. They literally probably bought this house 50, 60 years before they passed away. So they lived in the same house, and it was a small, little 3-bedroom house. I mean, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, but it was little. It was a smaller house. They owned cars for long periods of time. I remember they owned this blue van, like this, like more like the, like the Scooby-Doo style van, a little bit different, but they owned this van for 20 years. Like I never seen them go on any expensive vacations. Like they never went to the Bahamas. They never went to Fiji. They never did anything incredibly, exciting. They had enough money to live, and that was about it. But they were a couple of the best people that I've ever met in my whole life. They're just incredibly warm-hearted, loving, incredible people. My point is, you can't do what Fran did anymore in today's day and age, even if you wanted to. I don't know of one person, maybe you know of somebody, but I don't know of one person that really has gone to work at 18, 19, 20 years old, and at my age, 51, 30 something years later, is still working for the same company that they were working for back when they were, 20 years old. There's probably a couple of them, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. And even those that are, I've got a couple of friends that I can think of that may have worked for one company, but I believe it's been 2 or 3 in the same industry, but I could be wrong. But most of those people are living, paycheck to paycheck. They don't know how they're going to retire. Do you understand, folks, that if you're 40, 50 years old and you're not on pace to have $3 or $4 million in the bank by the time that you're going to retire, that you are in trouble? So this, just kind of reminded me as I talk, I get reminded of different parts of these YouTube videos that I watched. Ed Milet made the comment that let's say that you make about $80,000 a year and you feel like you could live off of $80,000 a year fairly comfortable. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but he showed the statistics that in order to live off of $80,000 a year, and that's just, if you were living off of $80,000 a year, you probably have a, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 home. So you got a house payment. You probably got a couple of cars. Like if you're living off of 80 grand a year, you're not eating top of ramen and, and peanut butter sandwiches. So you have a little bit of a lifestyle, but he is saying if you have an $80,000 a year lifestyle that you need to replace that income, you need to have a minimum of $3 million when you get ready to retire. And that's just to maintain what you've got. Now, most of the people that are living off of $80,000 a year, they're obviously not going and spending 10, 15 grand on a couple of weeks in the Bahamas, or, going out and buying their dream car, their Range Rover, their Rolls Royce, or their Ferrari, or their Lamborghini, or whatever dreams that, they don't have that beach house. They've got the home that they own, but they don't have the beach house, on the ocean or on the lake, or that piece of property where they can go hunting, or whatever it is that your bigger dreams are. This is just in order to maintain the life that they have. They need $3 million. So if you're sitting here and even if you're in your 20s or 30s, if you're 35 years old, so you've been working now for, let's say that, you've been, call it 36 years old. So you've been working since you were 18 and you're 36. Let's just say that you're going to work another 36 years. You're going to work all the way until you're 72. If you don't have almost $1 million set aside right now, you're way behind, because by the time you're 72 with inflation, another 36 years, it's probably going to be more like $7 or $8 million that you would need. So imagine here you are 35 years old and you've got maybe a couple $100,000. You're thinking you're on pace to have $1 million, and you're like, oh, hey man, retirement's not going to be too horrible. Number one, who wants to retire when they're 72 and you're too old to do anything and enjoy life? And, don't get me wrong. My dad lived until he was 81 years old. And from 72 to 81, he had a pretty good life. He was very healthy and was able to do a lot of traveling and do a lot of things. But that's not the case for everybody. My father was somewhat lucky in the fact that he quit drinking when he was 32 years old. He quit smoking when he was 33 years old, and he kept himself in pretty good physical shape. So he didn't have a lot of the addictions and, no alcohol and no cigarettes, no drugs, and kept himself in pretty good shape. But there's a lot of 72-year-olds out there that I don't think have a very good quality of life anymore. That's kind of a little bit of a different subject. That's kind of onto the health side of things. But even, baseball's not necessarily my number one sport, my favoriteest, pastime. I do keep up with it a little bit, but we all probably have heard of Ricky Henderson. He's widely regarded as one of the best leadoff men in all of the history of baseball. If he's not the absolute best leadoff man, he's definitely in everybody's top handful. He just passed away at 65 years old, folks. This is a guy that was a professional athlete. I don't know what kind of shape he was in the last handful of years of his life, but folks, 65 years old. It drives me crazy every time I see it. Like, I just turned 51 not that long ago, and I think, oh my God, 65. That's 14 years from now. Holy smokes. Like, I can't even imagine being gone in 14 years. I mean, I'm very much, I like my life here. I love my family. I like my life. Like, I want to stick around, hopefully, as long as I can possibly stick around, but 14 years. But my point is, he was a professional baseball player, and he got to enjoy a lot more life in his 65 years than most people will enjoy if they live till they're 165. But can you imagine, folks, like, for those of you that are like, hey, man, 20 years from now, I'm 40, I'm 45, 20 years from now, I'm going to be able to retire and have this incredible life. And I'm going to be Brad, I understand what Brad's talking about. I'm not going to be one of these people that can just barely exist at 65. I'm not going to just have enough money for the necessities. I'm going to actually be able to take that cruise, that 90-day cruise that costs $80,000 per person. I'm going to be able to take that sucker and go around the world. I'm going to be able to go enjoy, tropical destinations. I'm going to be living high on the hog. Folks, 65 isn't promised. 55 isn't promised, for that matter. But I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but what I'm trying to say, folks, is the time to start living is now. And so the biggest reason, the absolute number one reason, this might make some of you mad, the number one reason that people believe that right now it's harder than ever to get rich, is all up here. They believe it's harder. And they're doing all of the wrong things. Like, if you're playing, let's just say, I'm trying to think of a good game, a good analogy. Let's just say in poker, there's a poker game called Pot Limit Omaha, and everybody gets 4 cards. And you play this game out, and you get your 4 cards, and then there's 5 community cards by the end. So you have a total of 5 community cards. You have 4 cards in your hand to make the best poker hand. And what I'm here to tell you is that the absolute best poker player in the whole world, Phil Ivey, Daniel Negreanu, Phil Hellmuth, whoever it is, if you're a poker guy, whoever it is, they cannot beat me at that game if they only get 2 cards. If they get 2 cards and I get 4, I do not care that they are so much better than me at poker. They cannot win. And what I'm trying to really tell you guys and really make very clear is that you are playing in a rigged system. In NFL, the worst team compared to the best team, a lot of times there's not that much difference. There's not like a spectacular amount of difference between the best and the worst. Now, looking at the Kansas City Chiefs that are 14-1 or whatever they are, and then you're looking at one of the bad teams that's 2-12 or whatever, there's probably a little bit wider gap. But the funny thing is, folks, if the Kansas City Chiefs played the worst team in the NFL and they just played with 10 players instead of 11, so probably everybody knows this, but if you're playing football, you get 11 per side. I guarantee you that the Kansas City Chiefs with 10 players would probably lose to the worst team in the NFL that had 11 players if it was consistent. Like if it was every single play, that extra player would be insurmountable, even though we had the best team going up against the worst team. Now, in my opinion, I believe that the better analogy is more like the elite and the people that are trying to hold you down and the rules of the game that we are playing in as average citizens that don't know any better. It's more like they got 11 players and we got 6. Folks, you got to understand that the deck is stacked against you. It ain't fair. But you know what? Life ain't fair. There's going to be a lot of things in life that ain't fair. So if you come to me and say, hey, Brad, that's not fair, I'm going to say, I agree with you, but what can we do about it? How can we win? Now, the good news is if we're playing football and there's 11 players on the other side and there's 6 players on our side, and those are just the rules, then we don't have any outs. Well, there's nothing that we can do to be competitive and win. Thank God in our unfair world, even though the deck is stacked against us, we have ways to even and level the playing field and even put ourselves in a position of power. Because one of the cool things about being, citizens of this country and most countries is we have some freedom. So one thing is the elite have to play by a little bit of a set of rules where we can go out of bounds. We can do some things that, bigger institutions and some of the powers that want to hold us down, that they can't get away with doing. So what we got to do, folks, is we got to figure out, okay, what are our advantages? How can we beat this rigged system that we're in? So number one, quit trading time for dollars. Start figuring out ways that you can make money while you're asleep. And so, I'm not going to try to go through and give you guys all of the strategies. I'm still working on some of this, myself, but you're in a great place by investing in cryptocurrencies. So number one, though, just create that awareness. Realize that your job is a great place to give you some security and be able to pay your rent and your car payment and eat your food every month. But don't look at your job as the way that you're going to create wealth in your life. Look at your job as just what it is, a means to an end. Now, if you do, the second thing would be to really start to figure out how you can maximize the money that you're making with your job. So number one, I would say create some income outside of your job. But if that's something that you can't picture in your head right now, you can't imagine a side hustle, you can't think of a company that you would like to start, you don't like the idea of going to garage sales on Saturday and Sunday and buying up a bunch of stuff and then posting it on Craigslist or eBay, or you don't want to drive for Uber, whatever the case might be, I would say stay open to those opportunities. But if you were to tell me, hey, the job that I have is where I'm going to make all of my money, how do I take the money that I have from this job and create some financial freedom with it? Well, the number one thing that you got to do is, first of all, you got to cut down your expenses. You got to quit wasting money on all of the things that don't matter. I would recommend, throwing away your TV. Like seriously, if you're struggling to make money, if you're struggling to eat, if you're struggling to pay your bills, if you don't know how you're going to retire in 10 or 20 years, might not sound like any fun to you, but if you watched, a bunch of football on Sunday, my contention is that you might want to consider taking Sundays off from football and figuring out a way to make your life work in such a way that you're creating financial freedom for yourself. So if the income that you have is the only income that you're going to have, then you're going to have to downgrade. You're going to have to get your expenses down, and you got to get yourself into a position where you can save and invest a minimum of 10% of your finances. But realistically, folks, if your job is the only thing that you have going, you probably want to get yourself in a position where you can actually save more like 20 or 25%. So what is that going to look like? For some of you, you might need to downgrade and move into a smaller house. You know, it might sound crazy, but I have some friends that were multimillionaires. They went through some stuff down in, in the 2008, 2009 real estate crash where they lost most of it. And one of the things that they did is they ended up buying a piece of property, a cheap piece of property, and they got themselves a motorhome, and they got it on this property. And so they put themselves in a position to where they never had to worry about putting a roof over their head. And by eliminating that mortgage payment and so many of the expenses that they had over the last decade or so, they've been able to rebuild to where now they own, 40 plus homes, and they're back to, multimillionaire status. He's got a huge crypto portfolio. He's buying gold, he's buying silver, but it all stemmed from his ability to be okay with not worrying about what other people thought and downsizing and putting himself in a position where he could live. So a lot of you don't have the confidence and the courage to start that business, to start that side hustle, to do what you're really passionate about in life, because your income is here and your bills are here. Like for the average person in America, most people spend more money than they make. So they're slowly going into credit card debt, and they're, borrowing, they're making, borrowing personal loans. Or how many people do you know during this incredible real estate boom that that had, a couple $100,000 in equity in a home, but because they needed stuff and they were, behind and they wanted to go on vacation and they wanted a new car and stuff, how many people do you know that refinanced their house? And now they had this $300,000 house that was worth $500,000 and they had $200,000 in equity, but now they've got a $500,000 mortgage payment because they needed the stuff. They had to live, or for whatever reasons. I'm not judging, but my point is, one of the first things that you can do is figure out how can you downsize. How many streaming services do you need? It might sound crazy, but like Netflix and Prime and Hulu and Paramount, and I know about them all, but my wife and I, we used to have a bunch of them. We cut most of them out. So start figuring out ways that you can cut back and really go all out on investing. So, folks, we're almost an hour into this thing. I'm gonna kind of get on to the end here very quick. But what you got to focus on is owning hard assets. There's no doubt in my mind that paper money is basically worthless. The only reason it has any value is because the world has decided that it has a little bit of value. Now, that's true of everything, but at the same time, when you've got gold and silver, or you own a piece of real estate, when you have a hard asset, like even your car, now your car is probably a liability if you've got a car payment, but even like if you own a car free and clear and you drive it back and forth to work, theoretically, that's a hard asset, because if the crap really hit the fan and you needed to sell that car and use that money for some life, you had to sell your car and it paid a few months worth of your mortgage and put some food on the table while you were figuring it out, it could. And although your car goes down in value, similar to paper money in the beginning, comes a point in time where a car is probably leveled out and is going to be worth about what it's worth. That's probably a horrible example, but my point is the paper money that we have, that we own, when you go to the store and you hand them a $20 bill, or you go look at your bank account and you see $1,000 or $20,000 or whatever in your bank account, that money is becoming more and more worthless every single day. It's becoming worth less. I'm not saying that it's ever going to be worthless, but it's becoming worth less every single day. How do you combat that? So if inflation is at 11% a year, what does that mean? Well, it means that you need to start getting your money into assets that earn over 11% a year. Real estate is an incredible asset. Between the tax write-offs, the ability to take the income that you're making from crypto and different things and put it into an asset like real estate, that's going to save you money. There's a lot of us that are going to have a lot of money here over the next few months, year, that one of the key things that is going to be instrumental in your education, one of the reasons that I'm hanging out with this guy that's got the 41 homes is because he's teaching me how to move my money from crypto into real estate and not spending 40 or 50% of it going to the government. So hard assets, cryptocurrency, gold, silver, land, real estate, homes. There's a lot of different places that you can be putting your money. I particularly think that right now, cryptocurrency is one of the best places that you can be putting your money into what is really a hard asset. And the world is starting to realize that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are a hard asset. Over the last 15 years, you've all probably heard people say, oh, that magic internet money, or that's, like there's no substance to it. There's nothing there. What is a Bitcoin? Like, I can't hold it. I can't touch it. I can't feel it. Like, Bitcoin is nothing. Well, people are starting to realize that money is nothing. 99% of our money is a number on a computer screen. Like, if you were to buy a car for $1 million, you go into your bank account and you got $1 million in the bank, and you decide to buy a home with that $1 million. So you go buy $1 million and you buy the property for $1 million. Well, XYZ escrow doesn't physically take $1 million in $100 bills and drive it over to the other bank. It's all done on a ledger. It's all done through computers. It's all just a number, folks. So money itself is about as unreal as anything is. Is kind of a funny story. I was listening to a guy yesterday that talked about, I never saw this, I want to pull it up, but back in the beginning of credit cards, there was a Burger King commercial where it showed people, swiping their card for a $3 purchase. And back then, it was ridiculed. We talk about that all the time on this channel, how things go from, being ridiculed and violently opposed and made fun of to becoming self-evident and then becoming adopted. Well, back in the day, I didn't realize it because this was even probably a little bit before my time. When credit cards and debit cards first came out, people were ridiculing them and laughing, like, who's going to spend $3 on a credit card to buy a hamburger at Burger King? And now, folks, I would guess that 99% of the population probably doesn't have $200 or $300 in cash on them at any one time. Like, if you were to go out to some place, where people didn't need cash for anything, just their normal lives, 99% of the people, if you said, hey, if you can show me $500 on your person right now, like in legit cash bills, I'll double it and give you another 500. You could probably walk around all day long and not find anybody that's got $500 in cash in their pocket, but everybody has a credit card or a debit card that they can swipe. And my point is, all of that, credit card, debit cards, all of that is not real. It's fake. It's just a number on a computer screen. Bitcoin is similar in that, but the thing is, Bitcoin is, there's only 21 million of them. They can't print anymore. It's hard money. Same thing with like silver and gold. And so, folks, get your money into hard assets. So this millionaire friend of mine has some cash flow issues at times because he's got 99.9% of his money tied up in real estate, tied up in gold, tied up in silver, tied up in stocks. And when he really, 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 really needs money, he goes through and he figures out, hey, okay, I'm going to sell a little bit of this. This stock is up. Bitcoin is up. gold and silver's up. He figures out where to sell a little bit of stuff. But if you were to go look at his bank account, you'd be like, dude, this guy's broke as a joke. He didn't have any money. Like his bank account had zero in it. Maybe it was even slightly overdrawn for a quick second. That's because even though he's a multimillionaire, he doesn't keep almost anything in cash. He keeps all of his money in assets. Now, I don't totally agree with that for people that are working their way up. You want to have an emergency fund. But my point is, if you go look at the wealthiest people in the world, they don't have cash. If they do have cash, they're using it to buy assets that create more cash, that buys more assets, that creates more cash. But they're not just sitting there, building up these massive bank accounts. Like, they want to have their money working for them, not just sitting in a bank account, doing nothing. So last but not least, why is it easier now to create wealth than it's ever been? So the first part of that thumbnail was, why it feels like it's harder than ever to get rich, when in actuality, it's easier than it's ever been. And so I'm going to go into why it's easier and hopefully show you guys why it's easier. And maybe some of you will say, oh, hey, that makes sense, and really, go in that direction. Because number one, if you think it's hard, you're right. If you think it's easy, you're right. And so the first thing that I want to do is give you guys, an open mind that it might be easier to create wealth than you think. And so a couple of examples, folks. If you go back, not that long ago, 20, 30 years ago, if you had the dream and the desire to be a musician, what did you have to do? Didn't matter how good you were. Didn't matter how good of a singer you were. If you couldn't get Sony Records or one of those music companies to sign you on, you could never be a singer. You couldn't. Like back 20, 30 years ago, if you didn't have contacts and you didn't have a music label that was willing to sign you, you could be the best singer in the whole world and you would never have an opportunity to actually show the world and become a singer. Same thing with, if you wanted to be an actor. If you want to be an actor, I mean, even today, there's some truth to this, but if you wanted to be an actor, you got to go on all these auditions, and it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are. If you got somebody over here where they're basically choosing the actors, and you've all seen it in your lifetime. If an actor does something stupid, he goes out there and does something dumb, or he says something stupid on social media or whatever, they can cancel him. All of a sudden, we've seen many, many actors in our lifetime that just, fell off the face of the planet. One that comes to mind is Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was super famous, part of the Lethal Weapon series, Mad Max, a lot of good movies. And, he got caught on camera. He got pulled over by a lady police officer, and he wasn't a good person. I'm not justifying what he said or those types of things. But my point is, though, like, he literally, after this altercation with the female police officer that went viral, he didn't act in a movie for 5-10 years. And my point is, folks, I could go into more and more examples, even right now with this. If 20 or 30 years ago, I wanted to show my investment knowledge and try to build a brand around my investing skills, unless I could get, ABC or NBC or whatever CBS to create a show called Brad instead of Kramer, there's absolutely no way that I could have become, famous worldwide. And so my point is decentralization. Internet has made it easier than ever to create wealth in your life. You just have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone and do something about it. So if you have a dream or a goal, there's a pretty big possibility that 30 or 40 years ago, depending on what you wanted to do, it may or may not have been possible. I mean, it's always possible, but it would have been much harder. Like right now, there's a lot of people that are getting onto YouTube and creating YouTube channels and that sing their songs on YouTube. And guess what? The open market gets to choose whether or not they're good enough. If they're good enough, if they build a brand, if they build attention, now they have the power, just like Mr. Beast. And, you got, Logan Paul just made millions and millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars from his fight with Mike Tyson. Back 30 or 40 years ago, there's no way Logan Paul could have got signed up, could have got into a fight with Mike Tyson. And, 30 years ago, he would have got killed. But my point is, you know what I'm saying? Like 30 years ago, Logan Paul would have never been able to orchestrate what he orchestrated and got that 20 or 30 or 40 million dollar payday, whatever it was. The, decentralization in crypto. There's never been more information on how to get wealthy through investing than there's ever been. 30 or 40 years ago, the only people that really knew how to get rich through investing were the hedge fund managers, were the Wall Street guys. And they basically managed our money for us and took huge exorbitant fees. And we never were taught how to invest our funds. Most of us probably had 401ks. And really, what did we do? We took this 401k. There's a bunch of different options. We had no idea exactly what was the best option. So we went to a financial advisor and he recommended A, B, and C. Or maybe we just kind of threw a dart at a dartboard and chose a few and wished for the best. But we couldn't have control. Decentralization, cryptocurrencies has given us the ability to have control over our own money instead of letting somebody else that doesn't have our best interest in mind. If you're a financial advisor on here, I don't want to offend you, because I do believe that there's a lot of you out there that do an incredible job and you are extremely valuable to your clients. But there's also a lot of people out there that don't have good intentions and that are really just worried about their commissions and what they're going to make from their clients. And when it comes down to it, even the ones that have good intentions, they're also playing within a system that is rigged. So the companies that they work for probably don't have the best of intentions. The companies that the big companies, all of the fees and everything that they charge you, it's unbelievable how much wealth you would have created in your 401k if you didn't have all of the fees and all of the commissions and all of the hidden charges that they're taking out of your portfolio. 1% here, 2% there, 1% here, 5% there. It ends up being millions of dollars. There's people that are going to retire here over the next handful of years that'll have $1 million and think that they did good, but they'd had $10 million if it wasn't for the financial services companies coming in and taking a piece of taking a little piece of the pie year after year after year after year. You realize that those fees that don't compound, like you have fees on year one of your investments that don't get to compound for those 30 years. That 30 years of compounding takes that $100 or $1,000 in fees. And over the course of 30 years, that ends up being hundreds of thousands of dollars that you don't end up with. Oh, for goodness sakes. I think a Christmas package just got delivered and my dog. Come on, you guys, seriously. I think my dogs decided that they needed to protect me from the delivery driver. I know that I've gotten protected from the delivery driver, somebody that was going to, wreak havoc on my household thousands of times from these dogs. They don't understand why in the world would I yell at them? They're saving my life. Just bad timing, man. They just totally ruined my thought. I got to try to remember where I was at. If any of you guys are even still listening to me. Um, but yeah, so so the decentralization. So the reason it's easier is A, you can do things that you never could have done 30 or 40 years ago. B, the decentralization. You have the ability to control your own destiny, to get into cryptocurrencies. And, luckily for us, cryptocurrency is probably not going to be a vehicle where people can make enormous amounts of wealth in relatively short periods of time forever. Similar to the stock market and other markets, it will level out. You'll still be able to get a good return of investment. But I think for the foreseeable future, we're in pretty good shape. Michael Saylor believes that Bitcoin is going to be a $3 million to $15 million a coin asset over the next 10, 15 years. There's another gentleman named Mark Moss that we've been listening to that's thinking, like I'm hearing numbers like $42 million per Bitcoin. And if those numbers seem crazy to you, I just want you to take a step back and look at some of the things that are happening. MicroStrategies, I want to say that they own around 400,000 Bitcoin, something like that in that number. Remember, there's only 21 million of them. So if somebody owned 1 million Bitcoin, and let's just say that there was 20 million of them for, to be, easy math. If somebody owned 1 million Bitcoin out of the 20 million that there are, that'd be 5% that one person would own. So MicroStrategies is on its way and probably will own 1 million Bitcoin. Now, folks, you got to remember that JP Morgan and Charles Schwab and E-Trade and all of these financial institutions are now getting into a position where they can start putting Bitcoin into your 401k. And you have all of the public like us that wants to buy Bitcoin and hold it and use it as an investment vehicle. And then last but not least, folks, you've got, well, not last but not least, the second to last is you've got companies like Amazon and Starbucks and Dell Computers, and you just name them, like the Fortune 500 companies are starting to understand that holding cash balances in their ledger sheet is a great way to lose a huge portion of their purchasing power. So they're not going to all go and just replace their cash reserves with Bitcoin, but it is definitely going to start happening where more and more companies become like MicroStrategies and they start putting a percentage of their cash reserves into Bitcoin so that they can keep up with inflation. And then last but not least is you have countries. You've got America talking about creating this reserve, $15 trillion. And you've already got countries like, El Salvador that, were one of the first countries to start buying Bitcoin to use in their financial system. That's going to continue to happen. And the good news is there ain't enough Bitcoin. The bad news is there ain't enough Bitcoin. Technically, though, the bad news really isn't true because thank God, whoever it was that created Bitcoin realized if you could only break Bitcoin down into one unit, 21 million Bitcoin, if you could only own one or more, Bitcoin wouldn't have worked. But because Bitcoin breaks down into whatever it is, 10,000th or 100,000th, I forget exactly how many times you can break a Bitcoin down. But you literally, even at a $20 billion or $20 million Bitcoin, if you want to go buy $10, $20, $50 worth of Bitcoin, you'll still be able to. So, a high tide raises all boats. Bitcoin is the number one asset in the world. It's the number one performing asset over the last, 10, 15 years. And in my opinion, Bitcoin is going to be the number one performing asset probably for the rest of the world's years, however long this earth exists for. It wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin is the number one asset and becomes more and more adopted. And like I say, those numbers sound crazy until you start realizing there's only 21 million of them. And if some guy like Michael Saylor owns 5% of the supply, and then you have, the Elon Musks and the Howard Schultzes of Starbucks and the different people that start to come in and spend billions of dollars on Bitcoin, it's going to become scarce. And so that's why even owning one Bitcoin today is probably going to set you up for life in 15 or 20 years. Now, we want to get set up for life a little bit quicker than that here on the Infinite Crypto YouTube channel. And so that's why we do the Trader Tuesdays. That's why we do the Microcap Gem Wednesdays. You know, today's all about mindset and just opening our mind to the possibilities and getting into the right frame of mind. Starting to change our beliefs. If you believe that money is, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, and no, son, you can't have that candy bar. What do you think? You think I'm made of money? You know, hey guys, like, why turn off those lights, kids? Do you know how much electricity costs? Like, I love my parents, but all of us probably had parents that gave us limiting beliefs when it came to money. They didn't even mean to do it. Like, yeah, it's responsible to turn off your lights and not spend a bunch of extra money on electricity. But I promise you, when you're a multi-millionaire, it doesn't matter. Just like I talked about last week, when you have millions of dollars in your crypto portfolio, you are not going to care if a pound of hamburger is $3 or $10. You're not going to care if gas is $5 a gallon or $25 a gallon. It just doesn't matter. But folks, when you have this limiting mindset, this limiting belief, and you think that everything is hard and it's near impossible to get rich and you're never going to have enough money, you know, I just saw it on a little trip that I went to. Went on a little bit of a trip with a few people. I don't want to name anybody specifically. They might hear this, but we were in the Bahamas, and there was an area, in the Bahamas, because everything gets shipped in, everything's expensive there. Like, but it's all a mindset. So like, I made the comment, like, I can't wait to actually own a piece of property here and be able to live here for several months of the year. And somebody that was part of our party said, man, can you imagine how expensive that's going to be though? Like, I don't think I'm ever going to have enough money to live like you're going to live. And it was all just a limiting mindset. It was a limiting belief. Like, promise you, like, yeah, the groceries there are exorbitant because they're exorbitant. Like, and I was paying, it was like $25 for a hamburger with fries instead of $10 or $15 here. But once again, folks, when you start to create true financial freedom, it doesn't matter if the hamburger at the restaurant is $10 or $100, you're going to have enough. You just have to believe that you're going to have enough. So with that, folks, I hope that I was a little bit helpful. I don't feel like I really nailed this topic the exact way that I wanted to, but man, we've been at this for an hour and 15 minutes. You guys got to go get the rest of your Christmas presents bought, get, for those of you that are still working today and tomorrow, and then you're going to be off for Christmas and the holidays, I'll let you get back to work. For those of you that are, already in that mindset, maybe you took the whole week off and you're going to enjoy Christmas with your family. Once again, God bless you. Remember, 'tis the season, Jesus's birthday. Now, I know a lot of people will say, hey, December 25th is not Jesus's birthday. I know that. Nobody knows exactly what day in our calendar it was, but it is the day that we choose to celebrate his birthday. So remember that when you're with your friends and family, the Christmas presents and all of that is cool. But remember, the real reason that we are celebrating Christmas. Show your family some love, man. Have some incredible times. Unfortunately, this Christmas is the second Christmas without my dad. And it's a hard thing because my dad and that part of the family was who we spent most of these holidays with. And because my father passed away, things kind of disbanded a little bit. We still all love each other, but like, he was the glue that held it all together, and it was always held at his house and stuff like that. So I'm still kind of getting used to the holidays without him. Other good news, folks. My grandchild is finally going to get born on the 26th. We literally thought they were going to come a little early. I talked about it, a couple of weeks ago now. Oh my gosh. Quit it, you guys. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago and thought that my grandchild was going to come a little bit early. The reason I say grandchild instead of grandson is because we just recently also found out they thought it was a boy. almost her whole pregnancy. From the time that she was about 3 months pregnant, she did a blood test and we thought it was a boy, but ultrasounds had been inconclusive. Well, just about a week ago, they went and did an ultrasound and they can't find any male genitalia in the ultrasound. So we think now that it might be a girl. We're just waiting until the 26th. But long story short, she's going in on the 26th. They're going to induce labor. And so, you know, the day after Christmas, I'm going to have my first grandchild, hopefully on Thursday, the 26th. And so by the time we get back to doing these live streams the following week, I hopefully will be a granddad. So, you know, please, you know, if you're a prayer, if you're a believer, please pray for me and my family and my daughter to be safe. Pray for my grandchild to be healthy. And I would appreciate it, man. I believe in the power of prayers. I know they're powerful, and just all of your guys' love and well wishes means the world to me. So with that, I hope each and every one of you just has an incredible, amazing week and Christmas. And I am going to see a bunch of you tomorrow on Trader Tuesday. So we'll get an opportunity to say Merry Christmas again tomorrow. But thank you all for watching today. Love you. God bless you. Have a fantastic rest of your Monday, and we will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Take care, guys.